Are you looking to get on the road to your dream career? You're in the right place. Welcome to the Mentor Select Podcast with your host, Derek Phillips. Always stay up to date on social media at Mentor Select and online at mentorselect.com. Here's your host of the Mentor Select Podcast, Derek Phillips.
Episode 49 of the Mentor Select Podcast. We're one away from the big 5-0. Wow. That'll be 50 episodes that we have recorded and produced since getting started last August. And it's been a really exciting opportunity for me, just really getting to learn from all of the guest mentors as they've been providing just high quality virtual mentorship. So I hope that you all have benefited as much as I have. I really learned a lot over this past year from my guest mentors. I have some exciting news to share with you all. On June 19th, my daughter Legacy was born. So my wife and I are officially parents now to a beautiful little girl. She is our little princess. And it's been a lot of sleepless nights over the past 2 weeks, but we've been enjoying every second of it. It's really a great experience, great feeling being parents. So you can check out some pictures of Legacy on her Instagram page at Legacy Phillips. Yep, my wife already created her page. She's going to make her into a YouTube and Instagram star. She is certainly a little model. But today we have an exciting interview with our guest mentor, Stephen Fucile, who is the executive relations manager with the prison entrepreneurship program known as PEP. This is such a phenomenal program that is teaching prisoners entrepreneurship skills so that they can start their own business upon their release. And it's really making a big difference in the lives of these young men and just in the community, and just the impact that they're making is truly phenomenal. But I'm going to let Stephen tell you all about it. So let's get to the interview. So today we have Stephen on the Mentor Select Podcast. How are you, Stephen?
Hey, man, I'm great. Glad to be on here. Thanks, Derek.
We're excited to have you on. So, Stephen, on the Mentor Select Podcast, we encourage people to follow their passions because we feel that's going to ultimately lead them to their dream career. Can you tell us how you're following your passions?
Yeah, I can. Those passions have changed for me over time, which I think any adult, as we mature, starts to find that their passions will change. We often tell kids things like, find your passion, follow your heart. I mean, let me tell you something. An 18-year-old Steve had no idea what he wanted to do. I knew that I wanted to do something that was worth my time, and that seemed to be chasing a dollar, which I did pretty successfully. But over some time and some life experiences, which we'll probably talk about later today, I found that my passion and following what's in my heart is helping people. There's a lot of people out there that are worthy of help that haven't had an opportunity to know that they're worthy of that help. And, my heart's been changed because of that. So that's how I follow my passion.
Love it.
Yeah, that's what it's all about, man. It's all about helping people and finding support for others and finding a purpose. Dr. Jordan Peterson explains it. His book, 12 Rules to Life, that it's pursue what's meaningful, not what's expedient. And that seemed to take real hold of my heart and in my life whenever I got a hold of that kind of information.
So just a reason for waking up every morning.
That's right. That's right. They say when you do what you love, it's not work. I don't believe that for a second.
Sounds good.
I got work coming out of my ears, man. You know what I mean? But it doesn't. Yeah, but it seems to take the sting away from the work, and that seems to help. So.
Yeah. And I think also it gives you that energy. If you love what you're doing, it's just going to give you energy, keeping you fueled throughout the day. But it's definitely still work.
Right. It's definitely work. Like you said, it gives you that energy and it gives you the courage to pursue the things in which you are not sure how to pursue in that work. It gives you that passion, gives you the ability to turn on things inside you didn't know you knew how to turn on,
right.
or to reach a little deeper, to find something in that well to help you get where you need to be, because there's a purpose for it. It's not just, hey, what can I do to make another $50 or $1,000, or how can I, I want to buy this couch or that car or those wheels or that grill or whatever it may be.
Right.
That's hard to dig down deep when the time gets tough. But if you're doing something for a greater purpose and for the purpose that's literally fuel and that energy, it tends to be a lot easier.
Yeah, I totally agree. So what is your current profession?
So I'm the executive relations manager at the Prison Entrepreneurship Program. We are a second chance, entrepreneurial driven nonprofit 501c3 that helps men that are incarcerated in the Texas prison system find a way to have a much better life than maybe they ever thought they could pursue.
Wow. Awesome.
Hey, not too bad. Yeah.
It's certainly a great program I recently got involved with, and that's how you and I met.
That's right. I think the first time you and I met, we were in prison.
Right. Yeah, we were definitely behind bars.
Right. That's right. We were definitely behind some razor wire and big bars. That's right.
So, Stephen, how'd you get involved in the program?
It was the volunteer effort, but definitely odd circumstances. So I was incarcerated in the Texas Department of Criminal Justice, sitting in Bonham, Texas.
Okay.
And I received a postcard from the Prison Entrepreneurship Program. The only way to get one of those cards is to be incarcerated in prison and qualify through the lists and the scrubbing that they do through the inmate system.
Okay.
When I got a hold of that business card, I was in a pretty deep pit of despair, one might say. You find yourself in prison for the second time as a person who thought that he was always pretty smart and pretty capable. But you find out your best efforts and your best thoughts and put you in prison. You tend to want to re-examine yourself. And so I got a postcard inviting me to apply to PEP, which I did. I applied promptly, and then they sent me out an application packet, which was about 15 or 16 pages long. It was bigger than any job interview I ever had. Yeah. And a writing assignment attached to it. I thought, my gosh, this is going to be a lot of work, which I was excited about. So I was accepted, and about 2 months later, I found myself at the Estes unit, starting the Leadership Academy with the Prison Entrepreneurship Program. So that's how I got started.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
In your current role, how long have you been in your current role, or when did you get released and then get back involved with the program as far as working?
Yeah. So that's a good long story, but I'll try to. I don't think we have a 4-hour long format, so I'll
give us the high level overview.
So the bottom line is, like I said, man, I thought I was a pretty smart, capable guy who had some talent and abilities. Those abilities landed me in prison. Through that despair, that adds the same thing that any, I was a drug addict. And so everything that most drug addicts go through is shame, guilt, depression, fear, anxiety, and those things tend to cycle through your life, adding more shame, guilt, anxiety, fear, depression. Those things pile on in multi-dimensional ways, impacting your life that, leads you to, as the alcoholics or the Narcotics Anonymous people say, jails, institutions, and death.
Okay.
And I was definitely in one of those and headed to one or the other. So when I got that card, I started that Leadership Academy, and things started clicking. I heard we go through what's called the men's fraternity, or the authentic manhood program put on by Dr. Robert Lewis out of Arkansas. And it's a Christian infused program that helps people. What it helped me do was remember that I have the ability in my life to look up and aim higher again. And that higher is kind of like what we're talking about here, higher in purpose, not necessarily higher in aptitude or higher in economic climb, but higher in purpose. Okay. And when I was able to start picking my eyes up, I could start hearing the love and the care and the compassion and the empathy that was given to me through the volunteer network that really brought the hope of a better future into my life. So the volunteers that come in to teach the business portion of what our program does, oftentimes are retired C-suite level executives or guys like yourself that are highly motivated to help people who are intelligent and well-driven, people that are there to help people see a better way for their future and help them build a business plan so they can get an idea that that future is possible, so they don't have to apologize to everyone in the world for their past and still earn an income. I was so fortunate to be able to grab a hold of that lightning bolt of love and care and empathy that people had for me, and grab another one each and every day and pull myself out of that pit of despair through the light of God, through the light of these friends and mentors that I've been associated with, guys just like yourself. So
wow.
it was a blessing. Yeah. So through that effort, I found found myself looking at the guy that does my job now, whose name's Brian Kelly. Brian's got a great story too, a true tale of triumph of climbing himself out, and I'll let him tell you that one day. But he became our CEO, and this job became open, and I was sitting in prison, and I said, I'm going to take that job. And so I got out about a year ago, and I worked my tail off to ensure that the people around here knew that I was 100% committed, and to make sure that I was 100% committed. And I got back in the automobile industry for a few months doing what I was doing after having a bridge job for 6 months and getting myself back on my feet and following our fresh start principles, moving to a new city and doing the things that we say works. And it turns out they work. And so I took this job about 16 days ago. It's been an exciting drink from the fire hose ever since then.
Congratulations. That is awesome.
Yeah, thanks, man. Yeah, appreciate it, brother.
So the PEP program essentially helped you, revitalize you, saved you, and now you're paying it forward. That's wonderful.
Right.
Wonderful.
Do what's meaningful, not what's expedient, right?
Exactly. You live in those principles. Now, you mentioned something earlier about how you, like you say, you knew you had a high level of intellect, you were smart, but what you were focusing on, actually using those smarts, landed you in prison. Can you talk a little more about that? I'm sure there's a lot of people in prison who are very intelligent, smart, but maybe they're just focusing those gifts in the wrong way.
That's a good question. I think probably an easy way that I can sum this up for your listeners, or someone who thinks they're smart, right, who might be headed down a wrong path, that's listening to this, trying to find some hope, or one of our young people listening that's trying to figure it out.
Right.
What I realized is by hanging out with people that were much, much smarter than I was, that I realized I really wasn't that smart. And then the other thing is that I realized that there's a big, massive distance between being smart and being wise. And nowhere in the Bible that I read, the Christian Bible I read, does it say, hey, go out there and get as smart as you can. But there's a lot of talk about being wise. Right. And I don't think that wisdom was ever really spoken into my life or in a way that I could grab it. My intelligence and my quick-witted attitude that I had towards things created kind of a gate between me and people being able to speak into my life. And that's why it's so important for what you do is to create and foster an environment where it can be one-on-one, where you can really be that conduit to somebody opening that gate to allowing themselves into some wisdom and into empathy and love. Because when you stop being angry and you start thinking about how you can help other people, and that's wisdom. And when you realize that, somebody's definitely bigger and tougher than you, somebody can always beat you up, and you realize that no matter how smart you are, even if you're a Harvard grad, well, there's a Harvard MBA, and then there's a valedictorian at Harvard, and then there's a guy who's teaching those guys at Harvard, and then there's a guy that's the dean of that school, and then there's a guy that didn't even go to Harvard that can do that kind of calculation in his head, but he just doesn't want to deal with any of y'all. So, you realize it doesn't matter how smart or how creative or how intelligent you are. It's about sharing that, not showing that.
Wow. Love that. Awesome. Yeah, I totally agree. That's great advice for the listeners because, I love the analogy as far as being smart versus wise. We certainly want to be wise. Smart. I guess can you tell us more about, so with the program, I guess the focus is, you mentioned the fresh start principles. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah. Well, let me give you we have a set of principles that we live by and that we, I guess we could say preach or teach. It depends on, who you're listening and which one of the words is less offensive or more exciting to you. It doesn't matter, whichever one you want to grab is fine with me. But, the idea that there is a higher purpose to life, and that some of those higher purposes can be delivered with some simplicity. Like, let me give you an idea. So there's 10 driving values that we live by: a fresh start outlook, which means that we believe that every inmate or every human inmate is a human being in need of a true second chance. which oftentimes for many of those guys is a real first chance due to circumstances that they lived in, through trauma, abuse, systemic poverty, generational lack of education, stuff like that, that, some of these men never had a chance. Servant leader mentality. We believe that by leading an example with humility, at the sacrifice of personal glory, we can help one another by doing that in love, which is another one of our 10 driving values. We believe that our service is to be committed in love. And so that when we speak into people's lives, we have the right to be heard because we genuinely care about those people, and that everything that we're doing is for the greater good of those, of that situation. Innovation is another one. We embrace a pioneering spirit and are constantly in the pursuit of innovation and improvement in our efforts to help others. That's one way of describing innovation. Accountability, which may be one of the most lack fundamental beliefs that we try to get across to people, because without accountability, there's no ownership of what your part in this was, even if you had the worst circumstance. And I know where you've come from, outside of Chicago, you've seen worse circumstances, but Definitely. It still takes accountability. Yeah, your father might have beat you. Yeah, you never had a father. Yeah, you might have been sexually molested. All of that might be true. Yeah, you never had any food on your table. Yeah, you might be young and black and nobody wants to give you a job. Yeah, all that might be true. Yeah, you might be white and cocky and people don't like you. All of that might be true.
Right.
But what's your part in it? And because you do play some part in it, because you could, instead of committing a crime, you could have continued, or you could have took the job at McDonald's that did hire you, but instead of saying nobody hired you, you'd be like, well, nobody I wanted to work for hired me. And that's a more accurate statement. And that would at least be better, because at least you're taking accountability for the fact that you made a decision over another decision. And so, P&P as a company and as a program, we enforce a no wiggle room accountability program with our participants, meaning that everything from cursing to bad behavior to being late on assignments to not completing assignments, there's repercussions for that. And that's being a volunteer program. It makes a difference because, it's unfortunately, it's kind of our way, which is the right way or the highway. Integrity, which is a word that we hear a lot, but we don't always know what that means. You take a person without any integrity and tell them, integrity. Well, what does that mean? Well, in our case, a lot of times, we're trying to give you an infrastructure of integrity inside your life to build upon that. Like we say what needs to be said, not just what you want to hear, right? We're truthful with ourselves. We listen attentively, and to feedback from others as they speak into our lives, so that it can correct us and reveal our blind spots. That's what's important, is being able to see where our negatives are, right? And then the integrity is having a brotherhood of somebody to be able to tell you that. Your army buddies, your military guys going, hey man, you're slacking on this over here, and that causes these problems. Well, if you don't have the fortitude to hear that, you're not going to be a member of that group for very long.
Exactly.
Then there's execution. There's execution and fun. We try to teach the principles that work's an important part of life, but at the same time, it should be fun and rewarding. And that doesn't mean that work is a blast, that it's a big party, and that you have cake every day. But it means that you can go at it with the best possible attitude, and out of that attitude, you can have a better possible outcome, right?
Right.
And then there's excellence in everything we do and wise stewardship. I mean, we're, we try to instill the principles and the mentality of a steward, which means someone that's entrusted with another person's wealth and property, and us being charged with the responsibility of managing that in the owner's best interest, which are our volunteers, the foundations, and the people that donate our time to share that with our participants. That's kind of our motto. That's how we live, and that's what we try to preach and teach.
Yeah, and that was my first experience once I came to the program. I noticed how y'all have the values up on the wall, And that immediately resonated with me with being in the Army. That's something that we have to live by those values, and it was drilled in us every day. And it becomes a part of your life, becomes second nature. And so many people just don't have values. They're never taught values. They're definitely not living by any values, but it's something that's clearly you all through the PEP program, everyone I've encountered, you all are really living those values. And that's remarkable. And I think that's the foundation
thank you, man.
Of why the program is so successful and why it's amazing. So speaking of that success, tell us something about the success as far as with the PEP program. I know like the lower recidivism rate and starting the businesses. It's incredible. I'll let you elaborate.
Yeah, well, thank you. I mean, I would say there's about 6 billion types of successes that we can measure this stuff by, right? Maybe some of the listeners would like to hear some. I'll give you some facts, and then I'll give you some other things. Probably one of the biggest successes that we have, numbers-wise, right, is that we have 100% of our graduates are employed within 90 days of release from this program, from prison.
Wow. 100%.
So, 100%. Every single person that comes from a prison to our transitional houses, 100% of those men in the past 10 years have been employed within 90 days. And we actually average about 23 days of first employment. Some guys have jobs day 2, some guys have jobs day 3. It's really about the network of men that support each other here. It really is a fraternity. It really is a brotherhood. And the volunteer organization has done so much to help instill that. From like a small business formation or an incubator standpoint, we've launched over 360 businesses have been launched by PEP graduates. And there are 5 of those that generate literally over $1 million in gross annual revenue. A lot of sole proprietorships, a lot of guys pushing lawnmowers and pulling a trailer with another guy that works for them that oftentimes is a PEP grad. We've created thousands of jobs, amongst people, because if each one of those sole proprietors creates at least one job, that's 360 times 2. So we're at, 710 or something to that effect. And then you start adding on of what those residual effects are over time. It's sort of the spider web effect, if you look at it when a rock chip hits your windshield, which happened to me the other day. So I could clearly give you a visual of what this looks like. You described the outward vision from my car to the world, right? But the main point is that it's men helping men who understand where they've been and helping pull them up instead of giving them a handout, because we're a handout, not a handout, And here's another stat that I think you'll like. Not just do we get people employed, help people start businesses, but almost 100% of our graduates are still employed 12 months after release, compared to the national unemployment averages amongst or ex-offenders is less than half of that. So not only do our guys get out and get jobs, become good employees, and then they stay in the workforce contributing to the workforce. So instead of being a tax burden to the world, because it takes about $30,000 to house a Texas inmate, and we're really efficient at it. You get other states like Maine that might cost 50 or 60 just because like the economies of scale. Wow. So just some rough and dirty numbers. If you look at, say, a $30,000 cost to house a guy versus a guy who's been out a year making $30,000, that's a $60,000 tax swing in 12 months that we've made.
That's return on investment is there.
Yeah. And the other thing, I'm going to give two more, and then I'll. One of our highest points is that we have at this point, I think it's a little bit over 8%, under 9% 3-year recidivism rate. Recidivism is a really fancy word for meaning guys go back to prison after being in prison.
Right.
So we have a less than 8%, less than 9%, like 8.35, something like that. Number just came out the other day, so I don't have it in my head. But 8.4% of our graduates return back to prison, compared to the national averages of somewhere around a 60% rearrest rate with a 35% conviction rate. Yeah, and those numbers don't count things like technical violations. Mm-hmm. Our numbers do. So guys may not get out and commit a new crime and go to jail, but they may get out, not report to parole, and are found to be guilty of not complying with the rules, and they'll go back. So those Texas numbers don't even count that. Our numbers do. So it might even be higher than that. But let me give you my favorite stat. In the 15 years that we've been doing this, not one of our graduates, alumni's children, as far as we know, have ever gone to prison.
Whoa.
And the national,
Wow.
and the national rate says that there's a 70% chance that a child who has at least one parent in prison will go. A 70% chance that the generation will follow in their footsteps. And somehow, Lord willing, up to this point, from all the survey work that we've done, we don't know of one child who's ever gone back.
Wow. That's my favorite one as well. So
that's my favorite.
That just highlights how the work you all are doing, the program is changing the trajectory of generations.
And that's the idea, right? Is that it's generational and systemic change really from the inside out. You know, our motto is that we're doing life together, and that's what we're trying to do. Not life in prison, but life in the world, life in life. You know, it's about breathing new ideas, new flavor, and new life into each other. And as we do that with integrity, with accountability, with excellence and wise stewardship, and all these things that are just words to some people, when they become your creed and it becomes your motto and becomes a new way to live, man, you're really talking about impact players for life in the community. So,
Wow, that's awesome, and it kind of leads into my next question, which you kind of partially already answered, but you may want to elaborate more. Is what do you find most fulfilling about your career?
That's a really good question. Over this last couple of weeks, I've received a lot of congratulations, a lot of way to goes, a lot of attaboys. But I will say that for me, the thing I've enjoyed the most is the sound of my mother's voice when she realized that I really was truly pursuing what was meaningful in my life and not what was expedient. That I was willing to do more for someone else than I'd ever been willing to do for anybody ever in my life. And that includes my kid, that includes my ex-wife, that includes my mom. That I've really made a 180-degree turn from selfishness to selflessness. That the love that I have for my family is truly displayed by my actions. That I'm a leader in my family, and that I'm a person of integrity and accountability, and a man of love, and a man of God, a man of this world that's worth caring about.
Wow. Yeah, that's priceless. And making mama proud. You can't, it doesn't get more fulfilling than that.
Yeah, that's right. Oh, and the second thing is being on this podcast.
The second, all right, of course, runner up.
So you went from mom to Derek Phillips. I'll give you that one. Yeah,
I'll take runner up. I'm honored. That is awesome. Yeah. Some of those statistics, no college can compete with that in terms of having 100% employment rate after graduation, things like that.
Right.
College is.
Hey man, listen, I agree 100%. You know, 17% of our graduates. Listen, this is pretty cool. 17% of our graduates will get out and start at least one business. Okay. Well, compared to most business schools, their averages are only 15%. So we've got a 2% higher education to business conversion rate than the national average of business schools in this country. When you get out of prison, you don't have $120,000 in student loan debt. Right. You just got some explaining to do. You just got some apologizing and some explaining to do.
Exactly.
Yeah,
going back to my first time coming through the PEP program, I actually attended a graduation ceremony. That was my first exposure to PEP. And I was just blown away by just the energy in there, the excitement, the smiles, the families being reunited with the young men. Oh, it was sending chills down my spine. I guess you tell all the listeners more about, paint that picture for them at the graduation ceremony. That is so amazing. Okay,
I'll give you a story. I'll give you my story for a sec.
Awesome.
Maybe this will give you an idea. So I grew up in a pretty nice home with a set of parents that loved me, a lot. And for some reason, I was, an embittered, kind of angry child for some resentments that I'd built up in my own mind that allowed me to work myself into prison. We'll leave it at that.
Okay.
And, having a tough, loving mom who didn't necessarily know how, over the course of her entire lifetime, to deal with somebody that was embittered for things that, there was nothing they could do about. she did what she could do. You know, she loved me, and sometimes she loved me from afar. But in this journey of incarceration that I put myself on, my mom made a promise to me, and my mom has, to my knowledge, never broken a promise that she's ever made, except for this one. She told me that she would never visit me inside of a prison or a jail. And the reason for that was because she didn't want to go to prison. That's why she didn't commit crimes, which sounded fairly reasonable, right? But it doesn't change the fact that I spent a little over 6 years in and out of jails and institutions and prisons, and I never had a visit from a family member. And so when the graduation came and I had spent all of my time and energy and truly working my tail off to find victory through this program, to find success in it, and to not only graduate, but graduate with good grades, because there's like 52 tests you take. The curriculum's put on by Baylor. It's not easy. And so I wanted to have not only good grades, but I wanted to win the business plan competition, which is like all kind of culminates in like a Shark Tank style event the day before graduation.
Right.
You pitch it in front of a group to a couple of panels, and then the winners of those panels go and pitch it in front of the graduation group, which is about 250 volunteers, executive volunteers, and they vote on it with what we call Burt Bucks, which are the retired CEO's name, Burt Smith. And so we call them Burt Bucks, and they vote with imaginary money, and the winner of that total accumulated voted money wins the competition. Well, I wanted to win, and I didn't win in that fashion, but I did take third place. I lost my voice the day of the competition, and that's what I like to attribute that to. But
that's still impressive. Top three.
Oh, well, I appreciate it. There were some great plans that were ahead of me, and the guys that did it did a great job. So I don't want to take a victory from them. The two guys that beat me did a wonderful job. So I graduate. I know that I'm going to be on the stage there at the thing, and I know that I've worked hard, and I'm going to be able to write my mom a letter and tell her, hey, look, you know, this is all really worked out fairly well. You know, I really think things are going to be okay. And, when I walked in that graduation, I looked over to the right. My mom and dad were sitting there.
Wow.
And so sitting inside of a prison gymnasium with, I don't know, 350 or 400 other family members of the guys that are graduating with me, some of them who haven't seen their family members in 18 or 19 years because they came to Texas and committed a crime and got in trouble, got locked up for 18, 19 years, and whose family lives in Mississippi and are impoverished and not able to travel down here and see them in this time. So you're talking about people who haven't seen their families in 19 years, get to feel that energy and love, and all that culminates into that experience inside of a gym, inside of a prison. And you want to talk about the things of a non-worldly nature, about that which is least is the most. And that's an example of that. That's a perfect example of what something so small can have the world's largest impact on so many people. And these screaming people with signs that say, I love you, baby. And, you know, nicknames on there that guys never get to live down. You know, guys that call themselves Roberts, and all of a sudden, you know, you find out his mama calls him Little Bobby. Well, guess what? He's never Robert again, you know. So they'll remain Little Bobby forever. And, you know, so it's probably the most impactful, sobering, high impact moment that some of these men, maybe including myself, have ever had in their life. And it's the first time these guys have ever wore a cap and gown in most cases in their life.
Wow.
So talk about impactful.
Yeah, you did a great job of painting that picture. It just took me back to that moment. It is.
It's an interesting place, man. It's crazy to realize like the most amount of love in all the world might be found in a prison gym.
Exactly, literally. And also, like I say, every time I've been to PEP, one of the events, y'all just have so much fun and just all smiles, and the energy is mind blowing. It was funny. A guy I had met, one of the volunteers last time I was there. He's from Detroit, and he was like, it blew his mind. He visited a lot of people in prison, like family members and friends in Detroit. And he's like, he's never experienced prison like that, like PEP. He's like, what is going on here? Like, why are these people smiling and shaking my head and giving me high fives and dancing? Like, what is really going on here? So, yeah.
Right. Right.
Yeah, I've experienced PEP. It's definitely the best kept secret, especially if you want to volunteer. Oh wow, it's definitely an
Well, there's a
experience.
lot of ways guys can get involved, man. There's a lot of ways, Derek, that we can get involved. Your listeners, if they want to have a high energy, high passion, high volume experience, and be impactful into somebody's life. I mean, there's lots of ways you can attend an event. You can become a business planner, business plan advisor online, and do stuff over the internet, because these guys developing business plans. We don't have the internet in prison, so you're kind of the Google master for these guys, and you don't even have to go into the unit. You don't ever have to discuss it with anybody. It all gets coordinated through our organization. We send you kind of the outline of what they're looking for, and they have write you a letter explaining who they are, what they've been through, so you get some of that personal touch and get to understand what this person's going through and why you're doing this work for them and why they're trying to change. And so you can get involved that way if you're kind of a hands-off guy or a really busy guy, because it only takes about 30 minutes once a month, a couple times a year to do something like that. And that's huge for somebody. You can mentor out on the outside, kind of some things that they can go right through your company with you. There's eSchool, because we teach an aftercare program, or aftercare, or an e-learning academy every Tuesday at our office here in Dallas and Houston and Austin. Keep these guys with continuing education, learning how to use their marketable skills, learning how to communicate better, how to overcome the obstacles that are certain to come their way. And you can always you can always send me a check.
You'll set the checks.
Because it turns out we can't do any of this, and somebody didn't help us pay for it, man. And it's just worth it. I've been a donor since the very first check I got. I got out and have donated ever since the day I got out of prison, and probably will to the day I die. And I think there's a lot of other people that feel the exact same way. So
that is awesome. And so I'll definitely list all of the contact information, but where could the people get started? If someone wanted to volunteer, what's a good starting point?
I'm comfortable for mentoring if they want to contact you. So we have multiple touch points. I mean, listen, I say if you want to learn more about this program, they can reach out to Derek Phillips, because he's an amazing guy, and I'll give you all the credit in the world for that. But if they want to contact me direct, you can do 512-409-8118. That's 512-409-8118, or you can go to pep.org. So www.pep.org. That's it, man. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, definitely. It's a phenomenal program, doing great things. Yeah, I highly recommend anyone to get involved. The volunteers ultimately get more out of it than the inmate.
I hear that every time. And the first time I walked back in I'm telling you, the first time I walked back into prison voluntarily, it changed my life yet again. So The biggest thing was that I could go back out the same door I came in when I decided I wanted to leave. It was a big difference. Yeah.
Big difference. Big time. Yeah. So Steve, you give us a lot of great advice and just stories. Stories are remarkable. So as we get ready to wrap up this interview, there's two things I really want to touch on before I let you go, in terms of like some of your parting words of advice. Like how you want you to break it up. So what advice would you give to someone, they may not be able to listen to this in prison, but let's say someone who's in prison, just recently got out of prison, who didn't have access to PEP, and they feel like, hey, I don't know what to do, and they're worried about going back. Like, what advice would you give?
That's a really good question. And I could give a canned answer like, life's going to be tough. Make sure you keep pressing forward, follow your passion, right? What I would say, one of this quote that Thomas Jefferson wrote to his mother that was one of the most impactful things I ever heard in my life. He said in the middle of calamity about his wife had died, his children were dying. He was in the middle of founding our country and trying to fight off the British.
There's a lot of stuff going on.
Going on. And his mother had kind of wrote him a poor you letter regarding some of the things that had happened in his life. And he wrote back to his mother respectfully saying, Mom, it would behoove us greater than any other thing to fortify our minds against the tribulations and calamities that are certain to come our way. And I would give that piece of advice to anybody in the world, that life is definitely difficult. It is not going to be a place of happiness at all times. But if you're willing to pursue what means something to you, that you can find something that resonates with that vibration of your heart, and you follow that and follow the steps in which it takes to get there, which may very well take a long time to do, then at least when the tribulations and the calamities and the disappointments and the obstacles come into your path, you're able to move through them and over them because it's worth doing it. So that's the one thing that I would say to anyone is,
wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. And
Yeah,
yes,
thanks.
originally I was going to say, like, divide your advice up to two different categories, but that apply to everyone. So that answers, you answered my question.
I'll give you this one.
Doesn't matter.
I'll give you this one. Follow your heart. Follow your passion. Keep your feet moving forward.
No.
Call Derek Phillips Mentor Select. Get yourself involved in a good mentoring program. Give back and care about others. Right?
Wow, that's phenomenal advice. I love it. Well, we appreciate it, Steve. It's been phenomenal getting to know more about you, your story, and just all the remarkable work that you and PEP are doing. And we really appreciate it.
I'm glad to give it. I appreciate this opportunity to share not only my story, but to share the true victory of the volunteers and the men that participate in this program and the staff that makes it work. So, the churches and the organizations that help us. And so if you're interested in having us come out and speak to you more, you can call me at those numbers or get a hold of me through the website, and I'll be happy to come out one-on-one and explain that to anybody, or group of 10,000. If you want me to tell that story in front of there, we'll figure out a way to do that too. So we appreciate it.
What an incredible interview with Stephen. That program PEP is something spectacular, and what they're doing for these young men is just really phenomenal. I highly encourage all of you to reach out to Stephen, check out the website, pep.org, and just find out ways that you can get involved. I got involved about 6 months ago, and it's been an incredible experience. I look forward to continue to contribute to that program because I really believe in what they're doing. And the proof is in the pudding. As you can see that they're really making an impact, and they're changing the trajectory of not just those men's lives, but also their families' lives as well. So that's truly remarkable. So thanks again, Stephen, for joining us on the Mentor Select podcast and telling us all the incredible things that PEP is doing. Well, I'll be back next week with another guest mentor, so be sure to tune in.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of the Mentor Select podcast, helping you identify and follow your passions. For more great content and to stay up to date, visit mentorselect.com and Mentor Select on social media. If you enjoyed today's episode, please rate and review. We'll catch you next time.